just you get to choose. Right? Like here's the scenario. The environment gives us something which can be perceived as negative, can be perceived as not working, can be perceived as problematic. The world's ending. But we get to choose to see it like that, or we get to choose to see it as an opportunity.
So clearly that it's my responsibility now to do that for other people. If I have information and, other people's success is my success and vice versa.
Because you know what? Like, the challenges or the roadblocks are the journey themselves.
There's no big things. It's all little things compounding on top of each other. Another episode of True Seekers. Coach Nick Davies, Josh Krekel here. What's up, Coach?
What's going on? Excited to crank it, Coach. Get to it, hit it hard. Discover some truth. Secret.
We're diving right in. You all suited up? You ready to go here?
You got it, exactly. Suit up, ready to go. We were talking earlier about like the exponential difference between knowing that you can change your perspective and frame the way you view things and then changing it versus automatically going there. What do you see is the importance of that? Like how different are those two things?
How different are those two things? They're not that far apart, but the result is.
Yeah.
It's the difference between trying and doing or being even. And I think one leads to the other. So you're pretty close. The way I make sense of this is you're rewiring your brain. Whereas formerly, old model, problem happens. Oh no, this is bad. What am I going to do about it? Asking yourself the wrong questions. New model, something's happened. It's happening for me. I can't wait to see what it's going to deliver for me. And that space, in order to close that gap or to get to that second new model, is a lot of practice. It's a lot of reps. And then I can't even tell you, like I would say you and I probably live in that space. We've gotten to that space. Couldn't tell you when that transition happened. I couldn't tell you when I went from trying to being. Like all of a sudden one day you're like, oh, I am this way. So there's something there with that. But the difference is that there's less bad days. There's less, like the resiliency goes from like high need to non-existent because there's nothing to be resilient from.
It's you just play a completely different game. It's not like I'm winning at this game. I'm not even playing anymore. Like there's people on the field going crazy and you're just like walking around the outside of the stadium going like, where's my phone?
I love that image.
It's like, it's crazy down there. It's like, okay, well, like I already won because I get to go home now. So whatever you need to. But I will also say that like there's a transition, but I also say that the circumstances, it's not necessarily, at least in my experience, a one and done, because they're depending on the level of the circumstances or the implications emotionally, it can be more challenging. Not less possible, but potentially more challenging if you're in a loaded emotional situation that you weren't expecting. You probably need more practice to get to that place automatically. Would you say?
Yeah, definitely. That's such a key distinction. The emotions are what maybe you not overcome, but they're used for you instead of them using you.
Right.
That makes sense. You use your emotions, but your emotions don't use you. And if you haven't perfected or gotten to that place of doing or being, then you're subject to succumb to what the emotions are. They can be overwhelming, right? So they can influence the actions that you have. Whereas what you and I have worked on is when an emotion comes, oh good, like frustration means I'm about to learn something new. That's one thing to just say that, right? There's another thing to, in the moment, be like, I'm actually looking forward to what this is about to teach me. And it's funny because the feeling of frustration doesn't change, but it's our perception of it. And that means it feels like it changes for us. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And so we often go to, okay, here's the new awareness that you can define meaning. So, well, yeah, that's what we do anyway. But, okay, here's an example. Frustration means I'm about to do something new. So, okay, in the moment, practice. Okay, something happens. I'm frustrated. Okay. Well, what does that mean? That's really annoying. Okay. Oh, no, it actually means I'm about to do something new. All right. Okay. I wonder what it is. And then you go find it versus being programmed where you just go straight to, oh, here's the new meaning. Oh, that's great. And you're not even thinking about the reframing of what that is. So often we teach about like that's a specific word. We can say like, okay, oftentimes when we practice in the laboratory, when you're working with clients, you're doing reps so that when it comes to that emotional experience you don't expect, you can respond rather than react. So you have time to put that new programming in and just give yourself like a split second to have a different meaning and therefore a different response or a response rather than just a reaction.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so respond rather than react. Is that what you said? So you're mindful. The mindfulness actually goes away. So I think that's an interesting thing to where you just are something. So what do you make of that? Because mindfulness, I think that's a good thing, right? But it's almost like it's not needed at this point.
Yeah, it's like kind of like you said, right? You've now transcended. Not that makes you any better than anyone, but like you're now just playing a game where you're not in it, right? You're not. Here's a practical example of like thinking about what's happening in the world. It was on my mind because like my mother-in-law shared comments on it, like in a very nice way. Like a couple of months ago, like, have you seen the gas prices recently? What gas prices like here? She drives up from Florida. She goes through a couple of different states. I saw this in Georgia. I saw this in South Carolina. My response is, I have no idea what they are. Not because like I don't know what they are per se. Like I'm my mind is not completely closed off to everything. So I know that the rhetoric is that gas prices are higher than they were. I don't really know what it means. And the reason for it is because I can't do anything about that.
Mm.
So my program in that space is just to not be part of the narrative that I can't control.
Man, if the whole world adopted that, we'd be think of how many things that take up our attention that we just don't have control over. I mean, that is one of the biggest takeaways of biggest success principles, right? Is control what you can't control and let go of the rest. Right?
Yeah, like I often say, right. I often say if like that's the only thing we have a coach on forever, we're good, right? Like that's all you really need. It's like the number one principle to coach on outside of perhaps tyranny of the agent.
Mm.
And even then, it's basically the same thing. Tyranny of the agent is getting caught into things and doing things that aren't as important as the things you should be doing, essentially.
That's
which comes from people thinking you focus on things that are outside of you oftentimes.
Mm. Yeah. So what do you think is the biggest result or impact or effect? Why is that, why does that lead to more success? Like if we play that out, okay, we've worked on it, we've perfected it. It's part of us, part of who we are now, to reframe and to understand that things happen for us. What's the result?
If your focus immediately is to framing things that feel better emotionally, and when you feel better, you're likely to do better. So you're going to spend more time focusing on what you want, creating a future that you want, and then working on acting through it, taking action towards that. So essentially, you're going to do more things that you want to do to get more things that you want. If you spend all your time focusing on things that are outside of you, that's going to be such a large burden emotionally and mentally that you're not even going to be like, oh, I didn't do. Eventually, you're not going to be even, oh, I didn't do the things that I wanted to do based for what I want. You're going to be thinking, they're not even thinking about the possibility of doing those things because you're just completely burdened by everything else.
Yeah. Who told you had to take on all these other problems that you can't solve?
Right, exactly. Please watch this news of 7 billion people's worth of problems and see if you can figure them all out by tomorrow morning when the news comes back on.
Yeah. We want resolutions. We want options here.
Is there a counter to that, Coach? Right? Is there that's not the way to think? Like that's very selfish, or like you're not being a good citizen. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I think of all the quote unquote problems out there, I think each person is here to provide value for or solve or come up with solutions for one of them or a very select few. So for example, if you watch the nightly news and there's, murder on there all the time, are you a police officer? Are you somebody who can, is there, you in socially involved to where you can help out? Like, you want to align what you do well naturally with what value you can add for people that have a particular problem. That's what we do as coaches, right? It's a very particular skill set that we're here to show people how to improve, the ones that want to improve it. All right. So I think it is impossible to solve all the problems all the time with all the people. The only solution is for some of the people to solve some of the problems some of the time. And the more you focus on what you're good at and help solve, you add value, you increase the value that you add along the way because you get more proficient at what you're doing. And then also you can build around that. And if everybody lived in that lane to what their specialty was, then all the problems would go away. So that's what I would say to that. And it's not about you're insensitive. It's about being realistic about the impact you can make in the world. You're one person, right? You're one person, but as long as you're focused on what you do well and deliver that for other people, then that is changing the world. That is impacting the world. That's how it happens.
Yeah. It's like, and I've heard it before, right? I've got to know what's going on. I need to know what's going on. How do I know what to do if I don't know what's going on? Like, well, there's an easy solution for that. It's like, well, 5% of your time on the problems, 95% in the solutions, not the other way around. But coach, you absolutely nailed it, right? It's like, it's selfish to be looking at all the problems.
Mm.
You're just in the victim world. In order to be the victor, you've got to find what you can actually have impact on and go do that and be focused on that. And anything else is just a distraction and really a cop out. It's like, I can't do it because it's something else. It's like, it's you, it comes from a place of fear. Any distraction going down that place, so I need to have compassion for these things. It's not like you haven't got compassion, but you're doing what you can to make an impact, to make things better. Now, yeah, you maybe every often you might say, okay, what else could I do better? Is this still the thing I can do the best in? Right. And that's useful. But again, you're gonna be super intentional about that stuff. It's such an important conversation, coach.
It is. And we'll put a bookmark in there right there and we'll continue this discussion because I think there's a lot of people being called to different things right now, and that's what this is all about. So we'll keep this up, coach. Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching another episode of Truth Seekers. We appreciate your interaction. So please comment, like, subscribe to YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want more, check out some of our links. Links to our masterclass, The Achiever's Mindset, and come join our LinkedIn group. And what do you want to see more of? Remember, we're here to share the simple secrets of successful. So help us do that. What do you want to see? What do you want to see more of? Thanks, and see you again next time.